Good morning. Before we get started, please like and subscribe. Please share my channel. Please comment whether you agree with me or not. Thank you for being here. I love having you here. I appreciate you. Thank you. So, today is my last day at this job. I just thought I'd do a video this morning on my way. I did one last night because it even felt strange last night leaving the parking lot knowing that today was my last day. But I got up a little bit early today just so I could have a little bit of extra time. And I took my good old sweet time getting ready, and I was watching some YouTube videos. But yeah, this is it. So I actually had something that I did want to talk about this morning. It came from one of the videos that I was watching today. And this is about, again, and I've talked about this before, but this video got a lot more into it. It's about Paul. And the video had something, the title was, I think, Paul didn't create Christianity. I mean, Jesus didn't create Christianity. Paul created Christianity. And that is something that I do believe to be true. And I had, there was another video that I had watched a while back. It was one of the girls, I think she calls herself Jezebel Spirit or something like that. Don't let the name fool you. I'm not sure why she calls herself Jezebel, unless that's her middle name. But I know that Jezebel in the Bible isn't the most favored character. But this girl actually has a lot to say. She kind of got deconstructed from the Christian church. And when I say the church, I'm talking about the religion, the strict religion that is, or all the things that more or less go against what Jesus taught. And so she was one of the first people that I watched who had brought up Paul as one of her arguments as to why she didn't want to be, part of religion anymore. She is still very much a Christ follower, as far as I can tell, because everything that she talks about comes straight out of the mouth of Jesus. We have a Bible, or a part of the Bible. It's called the Red Letter Bible. I don't know if any of you have ever read that or gotten a copy of it. I have a copy of it at home, and I do plan to. I plan to dig into just reading the words of Jesus for a while. It's not that I'm going to throw away the entire Bible, because I do believe that the Bible is something that is a spiritual book. I'm not tossing the Bible out. I think it has very valuable spiritual lessons for us. But I do think that when we read the Bible, we have to read it in a spiritual, from a spiritual perspective. If we're reading it from the intellect, from the mind, or from the ego, then we might be getting a different message from it. So I think that's one thing that people need to be careful of, is just not reading the Bible based on their biases, not bringing our human biases into the Bible, and letting the words of the Bible be filtered through our human biases. But we have to get rid of our human biases before we even read it. Just stop and take a moment and say, Holy Spirit, God, please rid me of my biases as I read this book. Please fill me with your Spirit. Allow me to see what you want me to see. Allow me to read this book in spirit, so that I'll be filled with your truth. And I think that's a good prayer to say before we even start reading the Bible, because our biases tend to get in the way of a lot of things that we input into our system. Everything that we see, think, do, feel, smell, touch, everything is filtered through our own biases, through our ego, because our mind is there to keep us safe and protected. Our mind is there to show us the visuals that that we need to see in order to not be completely freaked out and see chaos. Our mind makes sense of this world that we're living in, and our core, the core of ourselves, what we developed into through our formative years, which are ages 1 through 7, the things that we learned and the person that we developed into, all those things come into place when we read anything or when we're in a conversation. Everything is filtered through the window of our own perception. And our personal perception is our ego. That is the ego, that is the us, that is the person that has been formed to walk this earth. But the spiritual side of us goes beyond the ego. That needs to move the ego aside and have the ego step aside and let the spirit in. Because when we read things through the spirit, then that's when we're getting the actual truth of who we really are. We're in this life experience, living in a physical world, and we're protected from seeing every single thing. I think somebody who took LSD one time, or they took, I can't remember the name of the mushroom, there's some kind of something that you take and it expands your mind, but he said he almost went crazy because there were just so many colors and so many things, and it just seemed like it was overwhelming, and it seemed like way too much. So our brains filter most of that out and show us images. Our brains fill in the blanks of what's not there and add little things to what, our brains just kind of show us an image based on putting together the dots and then filling in the blanks, more or less, just so this life makes more sense to us. But when we put our brains aside and our intellect aside, and we just read the Bible and we ask for the spiritual meaning of it, we will at some point discover who we are, that we are one. We are one with creation, one with the Creator, one with God, one with everyone, one with everything. We'll understand that everything breathes, everything is breathing, living life, and it's always changing. And that's one of the things I think that would probably drive us nuts if we could see it. We look around and we see solids. I'm driving on a road that's a solid, it's solid pavement. If my road were doing what it's actually doing, if my brain weren't filtering the road to look like it does now, and it were doing what it actually in reality does, we would be seeing a bunch of this. There would be like particles just in motion. Everything would be in waves and waving and moving, and it would just be crazy nuts, and there would be nothing to be grounded on. There would be nothing motionless. Everything would be in motion. And so how would we make sense of any of that? But when we read the Bible breaks through our brain, our ego, our biases, and the Bible gets right down to what is true, what is the truth. And the truth is that everything created is in motion, and everything is connected, and we are all connected, and there is an intelligence that is the Creator, and there's creation, and some people say that we are the Creator experiencing itself. But when God was asked by Moses, what is your name? God said, I am that I am. So everything in this life is what it is, and we're all connected to it. So that is really, Jesus's point. If we listen to just Jesus and we filter out the words of Paul, and I'm not saying throw Paul completely away. Paul had some good things to say in there, and I'm not going to completely discard him. However, there are things that Paul had to say that were contradictory to the things Jesus said. Paul never met Jesus. He never heard him speak. There were definitely things in the Bible that Jesus told us, about freedoms and about, oneness and about keeping the traditions. Jesus was Jewish, and he did explain that we need to be out there doing works, that it is important that we do works. And Paul kind of introduced guilt and shame. And he introduced the gospel of, all you have to do is call on Jesus' name. Jesus died on the cross and he rose again, and just call on his name and you'll be saved. And Paul kind of interjected some things into the Christian religion that started the whole movement, that is really what we practice today. So a lot of our Christianity, a lot of our churches are based on what's called the Paulinian religion. It's not so much Christ. Christianity insinuates that it's Christ-based, but a lot of the churches we go to today are actually Paul-based. They're Paulinian churches. So when somebody says, I left the church, or I decided to deconstruct from the religion, or I'm just going to follow Jesus, I don't want the rest of all of it. What they're really saying is, I'm moving away from the teachings of Paul. In the places, in the spots where Paul's teachings oppose Jesus's or contradict them, I'm going to make a choice, and I'm going to follow Jesus and not Paul. So that is really when people say they're deconstructing, I don't believe that they're getting away from Jesus at all. In fact, I think they're moving toward Jesus, just getting away from that, from Paul's version of the religion that was created called Christianity. I've heard this so many times, and I've said it myself. Jesus never Jesus did not say, I am forming a religion, and I'm going to name my religion after myself. My religion is going to be called Christianity, and y'all are going to join the religion and go to church, listen to a preacher preach, and it's going to be called Christianity, and you're all going to love it. And once I die and I rise again, I want you to make sure that you organize churches, and that you organize them you have a preacher, and everybody listens to the preacher. And, this is the way it's going to go, and it's going to be called Christianity. Jesus never said that, because Jesus didn't start Christianity. So one of the things that I saw in this video, and one of the things that I read, after I watch a video, I usually do a little bit of research and I look it up. But one of the things that I read is that people who dare to even mention that Paul didn't always coincide with Jesus, a lot of times get lambasted, especially by the church, by the religious people. A lot of religious people don't want to hear that. They want to follow Paul. They believe, because Paul has such a presence in the Bible, and it's the belief that every word in the Bible is true. Paul wrote the things about Christianity and his opinions on it first by saying that he had a vision, and then the disciples came in and they wrote their testimonies after. And the disciples, when they saw what Paul was writing, I think that almost prompted them to say, you know what, we're going to write our account. We actually walked with Jesus. We know what he said. So we're going to write our perspective of it, what we saw, because what we're seeing that Paul is doing is off. The disciples themselves especially Peter, did not agree with Paul. So let that sink in. There are portions of the Bible where we read that the disciples wrote, what they walked with Jesus, and then there's the whole portion of everything Paul wrote, and the disciples did not agree with Paul. So all of that is, as always, I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not telling you to run away from your church. I'm not telling you not to listen to your pastor, because I went to church for years and years, and I'll tell you, I still could go to a Christian church, sing the songs, join in, listen to the message, and still get a lot of spiritual insight out of it. I'm not about, leaving the Christian church and calling it all evil or anything like that. And I'm definitely not about telling you what to do or what to think or how to feel. But it's just food for thought. When we think about Paul, and we think about the church, and we think about Jesus, I'm going to get out my red letter Bible and I'm going to read it through and through. That's one of my things that I'm going to do this year. So I hope if you have read just the words of Jesus, let me know. If you have any kind of experience with this, let me know. But I just think it will be a cool thing to do, just to read the words that Jesus said. And I really want to get close to him. I don't want, again, I'm not going to discount Paul and push him out of the way and say you don't mean anything, and you didn't contribute anything positive, because I think Paul did. I think some of the things he had to say were very, very were good contributions. But I really want to just kind of ask Paul to step aside for just a little bit while I focus on Jesus, and that's what I'm going to do. That's all I've got today. Here I am in the parking lot for my very last day in the parking lot. I'm going to try really hard not to cry today. We're having a little get together. I'll be leaving a little bit early after our little meeting today. I worked some overtime so that I could do that. But this is just very, very surreal, very strange that I'm in my last day sitting here in this parking lot. But I wanted you all to be here with me. And thank you so much for being here. I hope you'll comment and share, and I hope you all have a great day. I will see you next time.